Hey, hey, welcome to another episode of Don't Believe Jack, your favorite podcast slash now video thing because I'm recording it because I shelled out money for the camera. And we're here. Welcome, hope you're doing well. Happy New Year. I think I can still allowed to say that. We're still in that window of time. It's all of January. All of January, you can say that. And it's all legal. I'm very sick, so excuse and pardon any kinds of delays and probably my lack of attention during this. This is going to be, I'm just going to call it right now. This is going to be a bad episode. It's going to be bad. See, it's going to be bad. It's going to be a bad episode. Um, Look, I'm just trying to announce it so you won't be disappointed. You'll be disappointed early but not late, which I think is actually also the philosophy behind Tinder. What else is going on in the world? Lots of stuff. But more importantly, let's talk about dogs. I love. Yeah, no, I'm sick. Okay, so I'm sick, and my head is clogged up, and I've been running around because I just like to run around until I collapse. To quote the great poet Eminem. Yeah. So I've got maybe a little more timbre to my voice. You're probably going to hear a little more like hawking a loogie or something like that in the background. Spit it right on the floor. Um, uh, okay. So, what did I actually? What has happened this past weekend? I went to a like a prayer workshop, which was excellent, and I really haven't my spiritual life has been very confusing for the last year because I was raised in Catholicism and then I was going, but then I was going to other things, and I didn't really feel as much connection to it anymore. Catholicism sometimes feels like, especially the church I go to, it's not. There's no one. I'm the only guy there like me. It's not really. I can build a community. I was. They encouraged me when I would go there. St. Francis of Assisi, really nice church, but I don't necessarily fit in with the congregation. And I was always it was funny because it's like every church I've been to is like basically Hispanic church. It's not a bad thing, but it just means that I can't culturally relate, which is not a great thing. I have to say. And but it was also funny because I'm in my 30s, but because basically the only people that are there are like teenagers or people north of 50. They group me in with the teenagers, especially because people think I'm in my mid to late 20s based on how I look. Not complaining about that, and not complaining, but it is an issue in terms of who I can socialize with. So basically, I'm pretending sitting there with kids, and I'm pretending like my algebra homework is also giving me a lot of trouble. That's that's a very weird post church experience to be having. So I didn't go, and I have been sort of attending a different kind of spiritual community that is more has a lot of people in my age group and a lot more stuff I can relate to, and is more ethnically diverse, which also I appreciate. So it was interesting to go to this prayer workshop thing, which was also pretty ethnically diverse. I was like, oh, this is neat. And it was cool. It was very very spiritual, and good conversations. Very much. I like intentional communities. Like people knock religion, but like everything. I think a club is an intentional community as well, but just towards very different kinds of ends. Um, but yeah, no, to be fair, but at the same time, it's predicated on you being down with Jeezy, and not everyone's down with Jeezy, so it feels exclusive in a way that a club is not. However, if you think about it from the perspective of like, look, I'm not into wearing fishnets, well then I can't get into the club, so that's its own kind of exclusive community as well. You won't catch me in 5-inch pumps. It's not gonna happen. I they make my lower back hurt. So yeah. Anyways, I did go to that, and that was really interesting. I went and hung out at one of my favorite coffee shops in town, had a nice long conversation about everything, and realized how old of a man I am. I am an old man, because I was like, these youth, I was talking with someone who was my age, and I was like, these youth, they don't get it. They are ahistorical. And just complained. It was actually a Tinder date. My phone is in black and white, so I was shocked that I was expecting to meet someone who also was in black and white. She did not look like the photo, so it was a little disappointing, I have to say. I was expecting someone from the 1930s, and she'd be speaking in an accent, and we'd be talking about her flapper dancing, and it was going to be a good old date like that. It was not. 'Twas not a date where we spoke like Vice. Vice is not. No, that's not a word. But anyways, yeah, I just it was good. We talked about a lot of interesting things. But yeah, I think it was just funny, like some of the things discussed. I just wonder how much. One of the thoughts that like really stuck with me is this idea that like we in our arguments and our discourse nowadays we really elevate like passion over like there's the idea of like being sort of conservative in your speech, right? Like not being expressive, and that's like a good thing. That's like a normalized thing. One of the critiques of that, of course, is that it's actually a very waspy norm. Like every field, like to be a lawyer or to be a doctor or to be whatever is very waspy. Like it's very like emotionally restrained and restricted, and professionalism doesn't have to look like that. Rational thought doesn't have to look like that. It can look actually like other things. But one of the dangers is like that everything is like a passionate conversation, and it's frustrating because people just want to overwhelm you with passion as opposed to like logic or reason. And I think that's why there are a lot of like bad ideas out there, including everything that's said on this show. Because like people are running around. We were talking about this idea that like professionalism is the person I was having coffee with is in a graduate program, and someone in the class basically said, like when someone mentioned the instructors mentioned being professional, and the person said, well, professionalism, I actually find that offensive because it's not. Because it sort of elevates a certain kind of restrained emotion, hence the waspy stuff I was talking about. And I sort of see the point, and it was funny because I've actually read that article, which was, this was back in the day when I had the internet. And yeah, right, it says basically that like it's substituting people's natural behavior for sort of an inherently waspy norm, and it's forcing people to, to conform to that, and that way it's very hierarchical, and very white supremacist, sort of implicitly, which is I think it is an interesting point, but at the same time, you can't throw out the idea of professionalism entirely, right? Like, just because there's a problem with it, throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think, after reading the article, I was like, this is a good point, but there's a lot to push back on it, and I actually think the problem maybe with that notion of professionalism is that it's ineffective. Like, for example, in the legal work I do, it's weird because I would have conversations with some of the people I work with saying, no, actually, it's important for you to be personable in this work. And that's actually being professional, is being personable and being, not emotionless. Yes, I guess if you're doing like appellate advocacy, emotionlessness is really good. But if you're a trial lawyer, you need to be able to tell stories and tell narratives and draw people in. And so being professional in that context means both are the job of a lawyer. But if you're interviewing people, you need to be warm. If you're persuading a jury, you need to be, you need to tell a narrative and engage in storytelling. If you're doing appellate work, you need to be professorial and sort of academic and communicate in that way. And that these are all ways of being professional. So, like, professionalism is sort of a flawed idea because it actually doesn't teach people how to do their jobs well. It teaches them how to be robots. And so maybe one indictment of professionalism is that it's racist. Another is just that it's ineffective. which might be even worse. Worse than racist. And what's worse than racism? Ineffectiveness. Um, I think that that's true. Actually, as terrible as it is, yeah. Um, Now, if racism makes something ineffective, well then, okay, you win. You're right. But in any case, yeah, like it was a good first draft idea, and I realized like I love talking with people. I love having like good first draft ideas, but like it's really only good. Most ideas that like really stand the test of time, they're like good at like the fourth draft. You know what I mean? Because they've been pushed back on, refined. Like the example of like the way Einstein apparently like did a lot of his work. He would like come up with a theory, and he would sit and think about it for a few days. Then he would share it with like a colleague, like a physicist, and then he would talk about it with them for a while, and then they would poke holes in what he's saying, and then he'd go away and he'd sit and think about his ideas more. And then he'd come up with a new theory, and then he'd bring it back, and someone would poke holes in it, and then he'd go away and think about it some more. So it was this iterative process where he didn't just emerge with his ideas about physics, right? Like it was an idea that was refined over time, and that was part of why it's like that's like the history of like science. Like we have to refine our ideas, and so many ideas that are like in vogue now are like not tested. There's like a billion counter arguments to a lot of them, and they're not like little minor. I mean, a lot of theories, especially if in the area of like social theory, it's probably going to have like a good amount of counter arguments. You know, like even a really good theory will probably still have some exceptions or some situations it doesn't cover. But a lot of stuff that's out there seems to have a lot of big holes in it, and no one wants to acknowledge it. And if you point out those holes, the accusation is that you're just like an asshole, or you're like regressive, or you're conservative, or I don't know. It just so that seems weird. It also means like you get worse ideas just like floating around, ideas that don't work in practice, and that frustrates me. I find it like sort of disappointing. Hence me being an old man. These goddamn kids. I also hate. I also told the person I was on the date with that I also hate when these kids ride their motorbikes across my lawn and they rip up the grass that I've put a lot of work into watering. That makes me extremely irate. So yeah, that was dope to have that conversation. But anyways, yeah, a lot of first draft ideas, and it's like you gotta like even in comedy, I realize it's like I gotta like it's the fourth draft, it's like the fifth draft idea that's like really exciting and interesting. And that doesn't mean you have to start somewhere. You have to start with the first draft idea, and I get that. But like, it's weird to publish a first draft idea. Like you certainly would share or publicize a first draft idea, but like making it new doctrine is sort of bananas. And it's weird. It's weird when you get. I was saying this that like it's weird when you talk with someone who gets an idea from an article on the internet because if they don't understand the reasoning behind it, then they really can't make an argument for it. They just are just like everyone should do X, but they don't really know the reasons why everyone should do X. So when you push back on them about why they're saying that, they just get angry. They just get upset with you and take like sort of a hot tea tone, and then they get really defensive. So it's weird. Like they went from like bandying about an idea that like they sort of believe, or maybe were persuaded by it, to like now they like defiantly believe it, and they've dug in their heels, and it's bad thinking. And I just find that like super duper disappointing. I don't know. Yeah, that's I guess what I would say. So it's weird that you can go from like that to that so quickly. I don't know. I do like dogs. Yeah. Anyways, so it was good. It was good. The herbal tea was excellent, and the sunlight was dazzling. A lot of sunlight, and yeah, I think that's what I wanted to talk about. Very important stuff. Okay, yeah, as you can tell, I'm sick. I was thinking about this. Like, I was talking with someone who has a dog, and her way of like the dog apparently has like anxiety, which is just amazing that like dogs have anxiety now. Dogs have like advanced human level emotions. Like, oh, no, I want to meet a neurotic dog that writes amazing screenplays. I just do so bad. And but like this dog, like apparently one way to like one of the reasons dogs get anxious is because they don't really have to use their minds anymore to like survive. They just get handed food and they just have to like care about the human that's giving them food and they get it. So they have all these feelings and all these emotions that are just sort of like roaming around for them and they don't know what to do with it, which it sounds like your dog's going through puberty. Um, but apparently one of the ways to help a dog is you can buy these things. They're like puzzles for dogs where like they have to solve a puzzle to get the food. So they have to like experiment with like you. It's like essentially it's almost like a box, and they have to like turn a crank and like move a peg somewhere, and then they can get their food. And it just seems like that's awesome to think. Like the way to calm down a dog is like to give it like a Sudoku, and and we have like devices that do this where they have to like turn cranks and all this stuff, and it's like man, the dog's just like, "Ugh, God, I'm getting ready. Like the dog's ready to be an attorney after enough of these. I think the dog could just take the LSAT. Getting the transcripts might be hard without being able to sign that release that the dog needs to sign to get the transcripts. But you get the idea. But there's just something adorable about the idea that like dogs are just like I need to get out of my head. And you know what? Like these hangman puzzles, they really relax me. They really relax me, and it's really fun. I dig it. So, anyways, I just did want to talk about that. Uh, I was thinking that I've had some bad dates. Like it's weird when someone like debates with you like endlessly. And and they act like really crazy towards you, and then you are just like you sort of shut them down and shut them out, and then they say something like, "It must be because we are so alike," and that is like nails on chalkboard to me. It's just so funny. It's you just want to like you're just like, well, let me jump out of the car. That seems cool. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Oh, I'm back at the show that I work at has resumed, and I remember someone was asking me like before like what I like about the show, and it's just interesting to see inside like the entertainment business, to see inside the machine how it works and how things are interpersonally and how it's a very well functioning machine. Uh, it operates very smoothly and it's really it's like it's cool to be there even though I'm not doing anything that's that high level or advanced. I just to be around it, to be like seeing how people are like in terms of the professionalism and people being sort of mature, like it's an adult environment, and I don't mean that in any kind of lurid or lascivious sense. I just mean like people are just it's interesting because you just get the role modeling of people being like responsible professional people, and everyone is sort of like acting like adults, and it is very hierarchical, but it seems like that hierarchy manages a certain degree of respect amongst people, and there's a certain level of like I don't know, like just professionalism. And so it's just when you hang out at like a bunch of open mics, it's interesting to see like where everyone is trying to get out of open mics or out of bar shows, and they're trying to get into like a TV show, and then to see the professional environment around the TV show is like really really interesting. And it makes me realize, oh, you can focus so much on like, am I funnier than this person, or is this person funnier than me, or like, can I get on that show? Could I possibly get on that show? That like, you don't even, you can lose sight of like the really big picture, and it's nice to see. So yeah, I mean that's like one of the things, just seeing that like why you have to bring your A game, why you have to be like an adult, is because ultimately, like, where people capitalize on their abilities is, it's a mature environment. And you're not the center of the universe. Even like the talent, quote unquote, is not the center of the universe. It's like everybody is the center. It's like a team. It's like a family. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I just interesting. Also, just like gives me a different perspective on myself and like what I would want to potentially do in like some kind of professional creative field. So I can't recommend it enough. It is very interesting. You learn a lot just from being around those people and seeing what the environment looks and works like. Uh, yeah, that's cool. I will say that I definitely do like building on something I said before on an earlier episode. I definitely like really don't watch TV anymore. I don't know where it fits in. So that's like its own can of worms. But I do enjoy books a lot. Oh, I enjoy it. I'm reading *Sapiens* right now, and it's amazing. You got to read it. It's so fun and interesting to hear him talk about the human race. His perspective on the human race is just really fun and entertaining. I dig it. Um, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm sick. I'm all over the place. Let me see some of my old notes that I wrote. I think everyone still like talks about Kaepernick, and I think I have to say, like, I think Kaepernick's mistake was uh, Kaepernick's well, no, nah. Yeah, Kaepernick's mistake was that he started protesting too early. Like, he's got to follow the LeBron model, where like you win championships and then you start speaking out about public issues. Because people can't get rid of you once you've won championships. America is at least that meritocratic that like if you win championships, you can talk all the shit you want about anything and anybody. Like, they'll just let you, and then you can actually write your own ticket. But it's almost like, it's like in comedy, right? It's like, oh, you have to be, yeah, you can like say something profound, but you have to make sure that you're being funny. Being funny is the point of the realm, and that's your responsibility. And then if you can say something brilliant or insightful after that, we're all really happy about that. But like, people will not tolerate you just saying something brilliant, because I say a ton of brilliant things every day. But yeah, like, I really do believe that, like Colin's mistake was he should have waited until he won a Super Bowl, or at least like an AFC or NFC championship, before he started weighing in on issues. He just, like, I know a lot of people probably, if you're listening, you're gonna roll your eyes for me to say this, but my firm belief is that every time an NFL, like, if you're an athlete, every time you like win a championship, you get more civil rights as a public figure. If you're black, like, you just earn them, and that's like really important to recognize. Like, you have to. It's in like the same way that, like, like, I worked in the Texas legislature and on like issues, and on our issues, my favorite people to bring in were law enforcement, because they just got instant respect from the legislators, because they were just like wearing their uniforms. It was just like, or like, like veterans, right? Like, veterans get a lot of respect, and it's like, it's because America is like this political system, and the political system can only exist because we have service members. I know, controversial idea, but because we have like a standing armed forces, that we get to have the body politic, and so the body politic gives its respect and props to veterans. And to people who have been in service. That's why we have like a bunch of representatives and senators who have done military service, and I think like that's just really, it's just like really important. As much as like I think some of my friends and even a part of me is like, no, what you're saying is wrong. Like, Colin should just be able to say whatever he wants. It's like, no, that's not the way it works. Like, athletes have to win their civil rights. They're inside of the Stanley Cup is your civil rights. And so you got to just skate your ass off to get it. This is not so much of an issue for NHL players, I must admit. And yeah, I just think that that's the way. Unfortunately, that's the way it works. And yeah, you just got to. You gotta start winning things, and then people can listen to you. And it's, I mean, that's not maybe the way I would have it, but I can understand why people have it that way. Because they can't sideline you. It's gonna be really hard if you won a Super Bowl for them to say, like, hey. Well, actually, now that I think about it, Colin did make it to an NFC. He did win an NFC championship and was in the Super Bowl. So, to be fair, if he just had made it, he just needed to come back for another year, win a ring. Because when you win a ring, it's man, it's like it's like it's like the Middle Earth. It's like that stuff. You just. What is that? Why am I blanking on what that series is called? Frodo Baggins. It's like a ring of power. Okay, you get instant respect. That's what LeBron learned. Every time LeBron wins a championship, he speaks out more. Like, if you notice, he became much more political after he won that championship with Cleveland, because he was like, I can do it now. I've gotten rings. I have 3 rings. You can't shut me up. And that was really smart on his part. Like, like LeBron, like Michael Jordan gets instant respect, but he doesn't address racial issues publicly because he was busy during that time defending the planet against the Monstars. Like, it's like a personal decision. Also, I don't know. Another question, like, I just have. I was reading about Michael Jordan, and I was reading that actually, like, Michael Jordan actually has done a lot of the same things LeBron has done, but like, Michael Jordan sort of has an attitude of like, look, if it's in the realm of my authority, I will speak on it, and if it's outside of the realm of my authority, I'm not going to speak on it. So, because apparently this article was just making the point that actually, even though Michael Jordan said things like Republicans buy shoes too, which is one of the greatest lines of the 20th century. I think that's got to go up there with that. Everyone will have 15 minutes of fame. But like, when that stuff about Donald Sterling saying that stuff about the players came out, Michael Jordan got apparently very pissed and basically told the other owners, like, look, we have to get rid of this guy. And the idiot was like, whoa, Michael, he's being so political. It's like, no. It's that Michael felt like, look, I'm an owner of an NBA team. This is about the brand of the NBA. So I have authority to speak out on this because this is my area of expertise. I am the god of basketball. I'm not the god of police reform. And, so he decided not to take a stand in that way. And I just think like it was a really great article. It was a really interesting insight because Michael Jordan regularly gets called an Uncle Tom or a sellout, or he doesn't care about these issues, and very quietly he does, but he doesn't make a big show of it. That's not what he maybe is about. That's not his philosophy. But that doesn't make him like a bad guy. It just, I don't know, it just makes him sort of, he's humble. Sit down. No, he's just his own sort of dude. He's got his own philosophy. And it also like raised a question for me of like, why is it that like, if someone, and I see this like socially now, right? Like, if someone agrees with you on something, like generally, but they don't agree with the specifics, it's like those people get demonized, and it's such like a counterproductive way to have discourse. Because I don't really think anyone wins when you just like, shit on someone for just not sharing your exact ideological beliefs, but I see it happening. It's very fashionable to do that. So I don't know. I just think that that's interesting. Um, yes, yes. Okay. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I just think that's funny. Uh, but Colin, yes, he is. He's like everyone will talk about how he's out of the league. I'm too sick to come up with a full idea. I'm just that's the first draft, baby. Um, hmm. I Oh yeah, let's actually bring this back to that prayer thing. I was having like a discussion with someone about spirituality and like how you can reconcile spirituality with science. And I think what I have realized, at least for myself, is like we only had like spirituality or religion for like a really long time, and then science came along, and it started like coming up with alternate explanations for things that challenged religion. And I think and so I think the instinct of a lot of people is to just be like religion is terrible and it's wrong, and it's like well, yeah, but like you have to look at it in the context of like what we had, in terms of a way to explain the world at the time. I don't think like religion should be like shutting down new ways to explain things, but it's sort of like a placeholder. There is a mystery, I think even spirituality is at a certain point going to be displaced and seen as barbaric. Like when we get a better understanding of how the brain works. Like the brain is like if you read anything by like Sam Harris, like the brain is like this super confusing, mysterious thing. Like we give people antidepressants, we still really actually don't understand how they work. Um, we really still don't understand like how the brain works, and so um, I think at a certain point, even what we define now as spirituality or even atheism will be displaced as science gets better. Um, because there's still a grand mystery at the center of everything, which is like how our consciousness works, why we are conscious in the sense of self-aware, when other animals appear not to have as much self-awareness, though some do. Um, like we still have all these open-ended questions, and like neuroscience will continue to answer them. Like why is it that like if you meditate or you write like a gratitude list, like literally your mood can like get better? That's insane. You know what I mean? Like that reality is subjective in that way for us. Like that I can write like a gratitude list, which I do in the morning, and my well-being, I can see the world in a different way and interact with people in a different way. And to me that's an interesting mystery. I mean, I can explain it. People, someone who's more secular will probably say something like well, that's just behaviorism. I mean, like that's just conditioning, that's just priming. And it's like, I mean, I think that might be the answer, but like we don't necessarily have the science to like back it up right now. Like even if we run trials and we see that like writing gratitude lists makes people feel better, that's still not like an explanation of the actual mechanisms of it, right? Like I could see that things, if I throw something in the air it falls, but like I don't, that doesn't mean I understand gravity and I can understand truly like how to manipulate it or employ it or even conceive of other planets that have different gravitational pulls, because I don't understand what gravity is. I'm experiencing it, but that's not the same as like understanding it or understanding how to apply it or use it to my advantage, or the formula behind it. So like I think that is interesting. Like mindfulness, gratitude. These are the kinds of things that are like thrown around a lot, and it's like almost considered like religion light, but there's actually something like deeply scientific about these approaches, but we still don't have the science to get there yet. I think that there may come a time where religion goes away, or at least changes pretty radically. I think already religion changes very radically. like with the new pope or the kinds of discussions we have now. But my feeling is like I want to be a part of those discussions. I don't think it makes sense to like not to just like step out of it because I'm just like this is all stupid and will be disproven at one point. So fuck it. Why even have the conversation? Like no, like have the conversation because it's important as like a person, as an individual on my own path to self-discovery. Like even a really well-informed person like Sam Harris is like, who he himself is a trained neuroscientist, like he doesn't know, like he's like, there's still a lot of stuff we really don't understand, and right, and that's that book Waking Up is like his attempt to get at spirituality without religion. Because the fact is, like, no, there are, like even if you don't believe in religion, even if you're just straight up an atheist, there are mysteries. There are things that are inexplicable. And, if you really hate religion so much, just do what I really want is I just want people to do all that neuroscience research for me if you hate it so much. I'm not, like, I sort of joke that I'm like, atheists are people who believe in ruining dinner parties. That's my core belief. They do believe in something. They believe in ruining these excellent mashed potatoes. They also believe that salt should be grunted for instead of asked for. I disagree with them about whether religion is the cause of all terrible things in the world, because we certainly had atheist regimes that killed 50 million people. In two different places, but I can agree that the custard cannot come soon enough. That's something we can agree on. But yeah, I don't know. I just think like I can't throw it all out because I'm still living. I don't really have a choice. It's like happiness. Like people are like, you seem happier now. You seem like more upbeat. I'm like, I don't. Believe me, I've tried it the other way. It doesn't work. I've tried it long enough. I'm out of options. Okay, I'm on my last leg. Just give me a break and a cigarette and a shot of whiskey. Let me sort this out, okay? I'm gonna read this book. I'm gonna read this book by Rob Bell. And I'm gonna see what life is about. Okay? I don't want to. I didn't even want to learn how to read. My mom kept hitting me until I did. I'm a resigned optimist, okay? I'm a resigned optimist. All right. Yeah. I gotta keep digging into this stuff. I just can't keep watching. I just can't keep watching episodes of Seinfeld. Okay, that's not gonna get me the answers I need, or want. So, anyways, yeah, that's just my thoughts on the spiritual stuff, right? Like we'll figure it out. But like the overall attitude of just being like, I can't even understand why people have these questions. It's like, really, you can't understand people have these questions? That is more of a reflection of like your lack of openness than any kind of particular flaw in religion per se. I think religion is fascinating, even if you don't believe in it. It's fascinating. Like Sapiens, that's what's really interesting about the book. It's like it's pretty clear he does not believe in religion, but he does, or he's at least curious about it. It's like that old saying that if you're bored, you're boring. I was watching, speaking of which, I was watching Lincoln, and I'm halfway through it. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really savoring the dialogue. It's so good. It's such good dialogue. I was looking up who wrote it and who wrote the screenplay, and it was Tony Kushner, who wrote Angels in America, and I was like, of course it's frigging Tony Kushner. That's why this dialogue is so good. But there's this great line with Tommy Lee's character playing an abolitionist. You may want to turn this off. Spoiler alert for a movie that came out at this point over 6 years ago. But you've been warned. There's this great line where Tommy Lee Jones is in it, and he says, because basically he's like on the radical right. It's really funny to think that the term radical right at that time meant people who were trying to not only get rid of slavery but enforce equality, enforce like opportunity for African Americans. That was the radical right at the time, and they called Abraham Lincoln a despot. It's a little weird. It's a little weird. It almost makes me look at the administration different. Almost. But not to get political. But anyways, this is great line where like basically like Tommy Lee Jones's character, who's like the head of like the radical right that's trying to not only like crush the South, but also wants to provide educational opportunities for African Americans and opportunities for everybody at gunpoint, basically enforcing not gunpoint at the former slaves, but gunpoint at like the whites who would try to force them back into slavery. Basically, like a radical vision for what Reconstruction could be, and actually was for a while until the Republicans actually did sell out the radical Republicans, and they ended Reconstruction. So yeah, there's actually a historical story there that's really interesting, and I can actually see the paranoia of the radical right. The paranoia and distrust of Lincoln, because they were like, oh, he's soft, he's a moderate, he doesn't actually have conviction to see these things through, and we believe in equality. So, anyways, it's just a fascinating story, and I can't wait to finish it. I probably will finish it right after this podcast. But I love this line where Tommy Lee Jones says, you know, you've never been surprised by Lincoln, right? So they're opposed to Lincoln, but because they think Lincoln is too soft on people who hold slaves, and they want a harder tack for liberation and equality. But anyways, he says this line where he says, you know, you've never been surprised by Lincoln. I think that actually reflects the fact that you're not a surprising person, which is why your constituents did not reelect you. And it was just like it was like a mic drop line, but then Tommy Lee Jones kept talking. His name is actually Thaddeus Stevens is the character he's playing, but I prefer to just call him Tommy Lee Jones for historical accuracy. And yeah, I love that line. The line that, like, you know, Thaddeus Stevens is sort of skeptical of Lincoln, but he's also like, you know, he's not necessarily like I'm not just going to take a tact of Lincoln is an idiot and he's soft, and, you know, in other words, just not taking some fashionable ideological stance of saying, you know, Lincoln is just a weaselly, scummy person. He's, you know, like, maybe we can work with him on these issues. I also like the line that Tommy Lee Jones says where he says, trust, I thought your chosen profession was politics, which is a great line, and was a terrible rendition of his accent. But yeah, that his chosen thing is politics. It's just trust. I've never trusted a president. I just love that line. It's just, it's Tony Kushner, man. He's got the goods. He's got the goods. He's great. And I do, yeah. It's just a good man. Good movies, when they're like good, they're frigging great. They're really surprising and dynamic. Like, I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat watching Lincoln. The dialogue is just that good. And it's just interesting to see. It's like a lesson. It's like a civics lesson. That movie is important. It's really important. And I'm really glad that I'm watching it. I'm just savoring it. I'm actually watching it in small bites. I think partially because I want to enjoy it over time. You know, I don't eat the entire tray of baklava at once. I eat half in one sitting and I eat the other half later. But it's so fun. It's so fun. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I would say it's the good stuff. It's cool. Bop bop bop. I'm still skeptical of television I have to say, as much as I do love movies, I still am skeptical of television to a large extent because I realize that it's like TV, like a movie is like hearing a speech, but like TV is like a conversation. And it because it happens over time, its effect on you can be like super duper subtle, and it can really displace your values. So I'm very like I watch TV in very small amounts. I don't know, just me, just something I do. Um, but I feel like it's wise because TV can just be really, it can be really confusing. Um, and I was trying to explain to I was just thinking that like like TV is like the mixed results of like so many different people's desires, but yet there's like one message that comes through in it. TV is like like when you eat ground beef. Like I think that when I've been trying to sort out what I like, what kind of media I like to consume, I think I like to consume like single source stuff. Like it's like coffee beans. That's how I want my media and my ideas. They come from a single source. I can decipher it. I can figure out what it's about, and there isn't a bunch of misdirection involved. Whereas like you watch TV and it's like the product of like, and in some ways that's the reason TV is sort of impressive because it's the product. It's the product of like 250 people working on one human endeavor. However, that also means it contains the sentiments and beliefs of like 250 people. And it can get really confusing when you watch it because you just absorb all of it. And you're not really necessarily sure what the message is. In a lot of cases, the message is just simply to keep you tuning in and keep you engaged. So, like, it can be even, TV can be manipulative, I guess, in a way that, like, a movie it cannot be, or it doesn't have the incentives to be manipulative because it doesn't have the incentives. A movie doesn't have the incentives to keep you watching. Like, there's not going to be like a Lincoln 2 that Spielberg's trying to come out with. I haven't seen the end of Lincoln, but like I just have to assume that there's no like cliffhanger he's going to leave you with. He's just trying to tell this story, and once it's done, it's done. And like that's not the way TV works. It's trying to like TV tries to like fuck with you is what I'm trying to say. And TV is like full of like I said, like 250 people's viewpoints. A lot of them are not like you, as I've sort of talked about in an earlier episode. Like they may not share your values, yet suddenly you're absorbing in sort of one of the most intimate ways the premises that they believe in. And you're absorbing it through a medium where you can't even see the premises of their arguments. It's like they're all just hidden in a narrative. It's crazy. It can be really confusing. The best way I could put it is it's like TV is like ground beef, where it's I mean movies are also the product of like a ton of people. So it's not to say that in fact there are bigger crews. But it's sort of a one-off, and it doesn't have the periodicness that can sort of seduce and lull you into something. Like I think that's the main thing. It's like I could hear a speech from like someone I disagreed with who was actually wrong about a lot of things, but if I hear like one speech, it's probably not going to affect like maybe I'll absorb some useful things they say, but like otherwise I'm not going to get conditioned to like thinking the way they think. But if I have conversations with them every week, it's like even if I disagree with them, even if their arguments are bad, if I'm not like policing them, it'll slowly seep its way into my brain. Like it's like ground beef, and I've been trying to say this for a while. It's like 200 cows all mixed together and ground up, and there's lips and there's hooves and there's assholes in the meat, and you're just eating all of it mixed together, and it's very weird for you, right? Versus like something like stand up is like only from one cow. It's one particular point of view, and it's all asshole, and it keeps you very disciplined. You don't get lulled in or tricked as much. It's harder for them to trick you. It's just you don't. Yeah, it ain't gonna happen, because of the form. The form is sort of like you pick it up, you put it down. It's like a book. Like you're very aware you're reading a book when you're reading a book. Like sure you can get caught up in the story. But like the way it's set up is that you are always sort of evaluating what's going on in it. Especially if it's a nonfiction book, you're very much evaluating it. as you do it. And I think like that's part of what makes it a satisfying intellectual process. And I also think that's part of what makes why it produces good thinking. Um, because your mind is actually like reaching out to it. It's not passive. And similarly, I think also books are really interesting because they're the product of like they're a fourth draft idea, and the ideas are refined to the fourth draft, not the structure, not the pacing. I mean, those things are refined too, but like and sometimes like in TV or movies, like you can find like very sort of unsophisticated ideas, but the way the story has been written is very complicated, and so it feels well thought out. But actually, there's like something that's like very unexamined actually at the core of the narrative. So I don't know, just something I think about. Something I think about. What the music? Like, like I do have to be careful with anything I consume because it's just like, do I want to absorb their value system? Uh, like, how much of this art is something they're trying to say, and how much of it is just like convenient things that they've included in the format because they need to. Uh, that's all. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, So yeah, I don't know. It's just a thought. Like how much of like stuff that's in something like Game of Thrones is because they're trying to say something about the world, and how much of it is just there so we keep coming back and watching. It's just I just think like that's something to examine, or like in the embedded messages in it. Like I think Game of Thrones is like a really interesting example because like a lot of people were really upset about Game of Thrones because right, like the idea like all these women get attacked, and it presents these sort of bad negative messages about society. But my thing is actually one of the things that bothers me the most the more I think about Game of Thrones and the more I interact with certain people, realizing that like one of the things that really bothers me about Game of Thrones is actually like that they make like this one girl, they make like this one woman like she's like the savior of all the slaves. Like what is this, some Dangerous Minds shit? Like why like how that feels weird to me as well, that like she's this great liberator and she's like this white person. I mean, that seems a little silly and ridiculous too, but you would never hear any of the people who complain about the violence against women complain about that because that's a narrative or plot arc that elevates them. It's like, oh look, she's saving all these people. It's like, well, oh, you love that, right? But like, I hate that. I think that that's silly and reductionist. And actually, I mean, that just sounds like some stuff from the '90s. That like, this woman's gonna come in and she's just gonna save all these like swarthy, dark Middle Eastern or African people, and she's gonna get them to change their ways. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, that feels weird, right? Like, that's a weird message that I'm like, that seems goofy. Not only just goofy, it seems counterproductive, and it also seems like something a lot of the audience would get off on. They're like, oh, look, she's such a savior, she's such a good person, just like I'm a good person. And I'm like, no, you're not. I hate you. So, anyways, apparently, I guess my positivity has not held up this year, but my scrutiny and examination of things has, and I just think, I just want TV that's better if I'm gonna watch it. Otherwise, I don't want to watch it. Okay, that was a lot of steam. I'll see you on the fourth draft. That was another episode of Don't Believe Jack. Peace and love.